The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that 1 in 5 people in the United States live with mental illness, or appropriately 46.6 million people. And clinically speaking, certain psychiatric conditions, according to experts, do increase a person's risk of committing a crime because people with mental illness may be prone to violence if they do not receive adequate treatment. On Let's Talk, we will be discussing mental health and crime. My guest is Mr. Sunday Ogunrinde, mental health therapist. I am Olujoke Mosako saying welcome and thank you for watching Let's Talk always. So please stay with us as we enjoy this ride together. Thank you so much, Mr. Ogunrinde, for coming on the show. It's nice having you.
For having me. I'm glad to be here.
Okay. Now let's talk about mental health and crime. What is mental health?
Okay. Essentially, mental health includes the following: emotional well-being, psychological well-being, social well-being. All of emotional, psychological, and social well-being influences our cognition, our perception, and our behavior. So all of this put together determines how individual handles stress, handles interpersonal relationship, and decision making. So the absence of one or two of these elements is what will be absent, and that is what will lead to mental illness. The presence of these factors is what we call healthy mental state of mind.
Now, what then is the criminalization of mental health?
Well, like the word suggests, criminalization of mental health means attaching crime to mental health. And when you follow the history and of the development of mental health in the United States, you will realize that 50 years of failed mental health policy have placed the law enforcement on the forefront of mental illness crisis, of mental illness response. And these failed policies have turned jails and prisons into new asylum. What do I mean by that? Back in the days of institutionalization, people living with mental health are always using that word, institutionalized, put in a warehouse, locked up somewhere. However, this institutionalization plus outdated treatment laws, which demands a person become violent before intervention can be given to them, which is also a very discriminatory federal policies that involve federal Medicaid fundings, practices, and the prolong of failures by states to adequately fund mental health, all leads to the criminalization of mental health. And let me break that down a little. That means that now, rather than take people to the hospital for treatment, rather than provide medication to people living with mental illness to stabilize them, now the cops, the police, the law enforcement are the ones doing what medical intervention should do. And what would the cops do? They arrest, sometimes prosecute, and put people living with mental illness in prison. So this criminalization of mental illness has a very wide-ranging and devastating consequences. For example, today, 44 states, in 44 states, a jail or a prison hold more people with mental illness than the largest remaining psychiatric hospital in the United States. So while many of these states divert people, from jail if they have crimes or don't have crimes, why they divert them and why they label them with crimes and why they are put up with put that stigma of mental illness upon them. This diversion has not worked. For over the years, this has not worked. And that is why we see prevalence of people living with mental health on the train, in the street, and large majority of them are homeless. So that's how criminalization comes. The struggle between people living with mental illness to have a safe space and the people of the community and the law enforcement arresting and prosecuting and putting them in jail means criminalization of mental health.
Now, who are the people that you think are mostly victims or violence of this violent crime? Would you say they are teenagers or adults?
That depends on how you look at it. If you look at the crimes committed by teenagers, who are their target? And if you look at the crimes committed by adults, who are their targets? So victims of violence, I wouldn't want to say it's more on teenagers or less on adults. From my perspective, and this is my opinion, I want to believe that victims of violence are the community, are the people. Therefore, I cannot, specifically say that it affects youth more than it affects the adults. But a lot depends on the content, on the circumstances, the age group that is committing this offense, and the victims that is committing this offense.
All right, so let's just quickly have a background knowledge of the many cases, just like you said, that most of people in the jail right now are people with mental health. Now, looking at America as a whole, you gave us a background on understanding of what it's all about and everything. And you are also a mental health therapist. From experience and from the number of people that you've attended to, how would you rate it?
You mean how will I rate?
Yes, the level of mental health, especially is it gender based or is it a balanced equation?
Okay, it's not a straight jacket answer like that, right? Because there are some mental health disease that is peculiar, that affect male more than female, and more that affect female more than male. And there are others that affect both sexes equally. Now, apart from mental health, what I also do is with substance abuse, right? So in mental health, substance abuse and mental illness are related because, and in mental health, it's often argued that we don't know which comes after the other. We don't know which comes first, right? Is it mental illness that leads to substance abuse, or is it substance abuse that leads to mental illness? This is why in my field, we treat both at the same time, equal at the same time. Why if you have a patient or a client that is living with substance abuse, you want to find out if there's an underlying tone why this person is living with substance use. For example, if somebody come into your parties telling you, I use marijuana, right? You want to find out, why is he using marijuana? What is he using marijuana for, right? Himself may not know why he's using marijuana. However, when you probe further, now he may come around and say, okay, I lost my mom, I lost my dad, I don't have anybody, I have pains. So anytime I remember this, I remember that, I want to relax myself from stress, anxiety, and marijuana cools me down. Right there, this person is self-medicating. He's using marijuana as a medication to relax himself, to treat his mental illness. So, right off the bat, to say that uh, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression affect more people than other people, you cannot say that right on top of your head, except with a good research behind it. And I'm not saying that all mental health affect people equally, but there are more one that affects one than the other. I don't have my statistics around me here, and I don't want to go give a false statistics. Maybe that might be a subject for another discourse next time.
Thank you so much for that. Let's quickly go on this break. We will be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, the program is Let's Talk on DNTWOK, and I've been speaking with Mr. Sunday Ogunrinde. He is a mental health therapist, and the topic has been mental health and crime. Well, we've based our case study within the United States of America. I'm sure that it's probably, if not probably, it could be the same, basically everywhere. So thank you so much, Mr. Ogunrinde, for standing by.
Thank you.
Still talking about mental health and crime. Now, just before we went on the break, at the early hour, during the discussion earlier, we said a couple of people that are in jail are mental health people. Now, when a crime is committed, it is often attributed to mental health. Why?
Well, what I want to say that depend on who is talking and who you're hearing, right? If you're hearing the politicians talking about it, right? Politicians will always want to attach something to something, right? They will always want to give reason for some things. So people with mental illness are blamed for crimes, but research have proven that rather than be perpetrator of crimes, people with mental illness are more or less victims of crime. Crimes are more than likely to be, they are more than likely to be victim of crimes than they. When I say they, I mean people living with mental illness, than they committing crime. So everything you hear about people with mental illness and crime those are political talks. And there was a research that came and said that there was no correlation between mental illness, people with mental illness, perpetrating crime and more than any other people. I hope I make that area clear.
Okay. Now, with that, having said all that, is mental illness an excuse in court?
It's often said that ignorance is no excuse in court. However, there are specialized courts, and generally all courts recognize mental illness. Okay, so if somebody um, commits a crime and is taken uh, to the court of law, and of course, if the lawyer puts his lawyer is or a lawyer puts across that he's living with mental illness, then the court will provide or make possible for assessment to be performed on that person. So based on the determination of that assessment, the court can conclude that, okay, this person is living with mental illness, therefore he cannot stand trial. However, rather than they put him in trial, the court system will, send him to where he can get treatment. So back to your question, it's not an excuse. You cannot say because someone is living with mental illness, then you go out there and commit crime or attack people or inflict injury on people or causing people to be uncomfortable. No, the law does not look at it that way.
Thank you so much for that. Let's quickly rewind. You mentioned marijuana, and you know that in the US today, marijuana is is now a general thing that anybody can access it as long as you're, I guess, 18 upward. Now we have different marijuana dispensaries, a couple of dispensaries across town. How do you think, now that you made mention of being politicalizing or mental health? Now, how do we help mental health people when most of these dispensaries are everywhere and it's no longer a crime?
Okay, let me try to make a clarification there. I want to believe what you are making reference to is decriminalization of marijuana, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even with that, there are still laws, rules guiding them. Now, for example, you cannot smoke cigarette inside a public bus, right?
Yes.
The same way, you cannot use marijuana inside public transportation area. Now, if you are driving, you cannot be smoking marijuana and driving at the same time.
But
right?
People would do that.
People do that. People still do that. Now, the other aspect of it is medicinal marijuana, right? Now, they issue cards, medicinal marijuana, to people who genuinely have medical needs to use marijuana. So there are two sides to this. So there are those with a card, a medicinal marijuana, they can buy a medicinal marijuana. Now, medicinal marijuana is the ones that you use, to treat pain. Now, it is believed that THC, which is the intoxicating, the intoxicant in marijuana, has been removed from the ones you see in store with medicinal marijuana. So it is not meant to, to have to be an intoxicant, if I can use that word. However, people mix things up, and prolonged use of marijuana definitely will have effects on the brain, will have effect on the body, will have effect on the user with time. So that is the situation we're right now, and it is common these days in the subway to see people smoking marijuana. Is that legal? No, it's not. It's not legal because you're not supposed to use it on the train or in a public building like that.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Now, how best can we help people with mental illness? How can we help them avoid being in danger?
We need a proactive government policy. Okay. Now, rather than empower the police to be called into homes or anywhere you have people with mental illness, they should have more mental health counselors, case workers, social workers, people who are trained and specialized in handling mental health to be the forefront to deal with that. That is number one. Number two is lot of bureaucratic bottlenecks affect people, with mental illness. People always fall in between the cracks, and therefore people miss medications here and there. I think government should be able to figure out how to monitor. Government is doing a great job, but they can do some more. How to monitor medications and how to make those medications easily accessible to people living with mental health.
Thank you so much for that. And what would you advise family members of any mental health person, what would you advise them to do? And in the society in general, what would be your advice as someone who has met with different people with this condition?
I tell you what, people with serious mental illness most often are taken into the homes and just drop in the homes. Families don't go to check them. I think families should be more proactive. Check on your wards, check on your families who are living in mental health and who are living in the group homes. Also, care should be taken to provide more medications for them, counseling. They need more people around them. People living in mental, they need more people. They need support. Societal support, very, very important. Also, we should work some more to reduce stigma. Stigma is a big deal. Stigma is a very, very big deal in mental health. So to reduce stigma, just because you have a good mental health now does not mean anybody at any time cannot fall into mental health illness. Anything can trigger people to become mentally ill. Stressors, sickness, things like that. So people should be more empathetic. They should show more empathy to people living with mental health. That's very, very important. Empathy is a big deal. People should move to them. Then not using drugs, right? Not using drugs that can complicate the mental illness is also a very important thing that the society can make sure doesn't happen.
Thank you so much for that. It's been wonderful having you. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
And to you out there, thank you too for being part of the show. I know that you've been able to learn one or two things. So let's be supportive. Let's not stigmatize anyone with mental illness. When you show love to someone, the person can get healed fast. So until next time, when I come your way again with another edition of Let's Talk, I remain Olujoke. Goodbye for now.